"You're not good enough for my family," the millionaire told his ex-wife. 2 years later, he saw the twins. He crushed her heart with a single sentence. She vanished, leaving nothing behind. Years later, a single encounter would force him to face a truth he never saw coming. Hey, beautiful souls, I'm your storyteller, James, and today I'm about to take you on a roller coaster of love, betrayal, and unshakable strength. Get ready to feel every emotion, live every moment, and witness a story that will stay with you long after it ends. The sky had that rare Manhattan glow, the kind that turned steel and glass into molten gold as the sun dipped behind the skyline. Nia Montgomery stood on the sidewalk outside Blackwood Tower, clutching a silver gift bag to her chest. The city roared around her, horns, voices, footsteps colliding in the night air. But inside her chest, everything was soft, hopeful, quiet. 5 years, 5 years of loving a man who rarely made room for softness. But tonight, she believed, truly believed, she'd see a different version of him. Nia lifted her chin and walked inside. The marble lobby lights washed over her like a spotlight, catching the shimmer in her eyes, the nervous smile she tried to hide. Employees passing by whispered happy anniversary under their breath. Everyone in this building knew. Everyone but the man who mattered. She rode the private elevator to the 82nd floor, heart trembling with a mix of fear and anticipation. Julian Blackwood was complicated, brilliant, driven, terrifying on bad days. But he had once held her with a tenderness she still prayed wasn't an illusion. The elevator chimed, her breath caught. Julian's office glowed dimly, lit only by the city beyond the glass. He stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, hands in his pockets, shoulders rigid. He didn't turn when she entered. He didn't speak her name. He didn't react at all. "Julian." Her voice was small, the kind of small that came from loving someone too hard for too long. Nothing. She stepped inside anyway, heels clicking softly across the wood. "I thought maybe we could—" "The merger requires a unified front, Nia." No greeting, no warmth, just strategy. Her hand froze around the gift bag. The words sank slowly, painfully, like stones thrown into deep water. Julian finally turned. His eyes were colder than the skyline behind him. "Ilara's family, her connections. She's better for me than you." Time didn't slow. It stopped. Nia blinked once, twice, a third time, but the words didn't rearrange into something kinder, something survivable. They stayed exactly as they were, sharp, intentional, merciless. "Better. For you," she whispered. Julian's face didn't flicker. He might as well have been reading a report, not dismantling 5 years of devotion. "Nia, this isn't emotional. It's practical." Her breath faltered. "Tonight is our anniversary." "Yes," he said simply, as if that fact carried no weight at all, as if it were just another date on his calendar. "And it's the right night to make this clear." She took a small step back as though physically pushed. The gift bag crinkled. The ribbon bent under her shaking fingers. "What about us?" she asked, voice cracking despite her attempts to hold it together. "What about everything we built, everything we—" "We didn't build anything," he said bluntly. "I carried the weight of this relationship alone, and I'm done carrying dead weight." The blow landed clean, right between her ribs. She felt it, physically. Nia's throat tightened. Her fingers curled protectively over the flat plane of her abdomen, where a secret had only just begun to grow, a secret she'd planned to share tonight with trembling joy. She tried again. "Julian, Nia." He raised a hand, silencing her without even touching her. "My mind is made up. Ilara Preston is the right choice, politically, socially, financially. She comes from a lineage that elevates mine. The lineage. Not love, not loyalty, not the woman in front of him. Legacy. That's all he saw." Her chest rose and fell in shallow, painful breaths. "So that's it? After everything? After 5 years?" I don't need your dramatics, he said, turning away again. You knew from the beginning that my world operates on logic. Emotion doesn't move empires. Her voice broke. But I loved you. And that, Julian said, staring back at the city as if it answered him better than she ever had, was your mistake. The gift bag slipped from her fingers and fell onto the polished wood floor, landing with a soft thud that somehow echoed louder than anything either of them had said. Inside was a watch he'd admired months ago, engraved with 5 years down, forever to go. The gift she once thought would make him smile now felt like a joke, she told herself. Nia swallowed the scream clawing its way up her throat. She refused to let him see her break. Not here. Not in this office where she had waited countless nights for him to come home, where she had held him through storms he now pretended never existed. So she stood straighter, lifted her chin, forced her heart to quiet itself. Good night, Julian. He didn't turn. He didn't try to stop her. He didn't even breathe differently. She walked out with silent steps, each one ripping another piece from her. The elevator doors nearly blurred in her vision as she pressed the button. Her fingers trembled, but her spine stayed rigid, as if her body knew collapse could only come once she was alone. When the elevator doors closed, she finally exhaled. But it wasn't relief. It was surrender. Something inside her cracked open in a way she knew she could never fully repair. By the time she reached the lobby, her heartbeat felt uneven, her palms cold, her throat raw. She stepped out into the night air, letting Manhattan's chill hit her full in the face. The city moved on around her, unaware that her world had just detuned. Her hand drifted to her abdomen again, an instinctive shield over the fragile miracle growing inside her. Julian didn't just reject her. He rejected what he didn't even know existed. A tremor ran through her. She didn't know if it was fear, heartbreak, or the beginning of something else entirely. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She almost ignored it, thinking it was another meaningless work email, but the sender's name made her freeze mid-step. Dr. Myers. Her breath stalled as she opened the message. Nia, we need to discuss the results. Call me immediately. The world around her kept moving, but Nia stood frozen on the sidewalk, one hand on her abdomen, the doctor's message glowing on her screen. Because it wasn't just her heart Julian had shattered tonight. Something far more fragile was now at risk. The sunlight poured into the towering glass of the conference room, hitting every polished surface like it was inspecting the people inside. Logan Pierce stood at the head of the table, his tailored suit clinging perfectly to his frame. Every movement, every shift of his broad shoulders screamed control, power, domination. He didn't just enter a room. He claimed it. Across from him, Ariana Bennett's eyes darted from papers to the CEO, noting the subtle curve of his jaw, the sharpness in his gaze, the confidence that radiated even when he was silent. Her brown skin glowed under the natural light, caramel eyes curious yet cautious. Her braided hair framed her face perfectly, each strand like it belonged to a portrait of refinement. She was poised. She was beautiful. She was entirely aware of the effect she had, though she never let it show. Her father, Richard Bennett, watched carefully from the corner of the room, a subtle tension in his posture. He had built an empire from the ground up, and now he was watching the man who might shape its future, or ruin it. Logan's gaze was already fixed on Ariana, and yet he didn't see her. Not really. Not the kindness behind her eyes, not the laughter in the way she shifted papers nervously. All he saw was potential, opportunity, a connection that could open doors he didn't even know existed. But Ariana noticed him, the way he carried himself, the faint smirk at the corner of his lips, the storm behind his dark eyes. She felt something stir, a spark she hadn't felt before, something dangerous and exciting all at once. As the meeting began, Logan dominated the conversation. Every word precise, every argument calculated. He spoke about mergers, acquisitions, projections. Numbers flew through the air, thick and heavy, but Ariana noticed the way his eyes kept flicking toward her. Not to admire, not to judge, but to measure, to calculate. When he finally leaned forward across the polished table, it was unexpected. The room seemed to hold its breath. The air thickened, electric with tension. "I think I just found something far more valuable than a deal," he said, his voice low, smooth, and dangerous in a way that made her heart skip a beat. Ariana blinked. The room spun slightly. She wasn't sure if it was the sound of his words, the intensity in his gaze, or the undeniable aura that made him seem untouchable, like he existed outside ordinary rules. "Excuse me?" she asked, trying to steady her voice. Logan's smirk widened imperceptibly. "You," he said simply, as if the word carried weight, heavier than any contract, heavier than any asset in the room. Her chest tightened. She told herself it was impossible. A man like Logan Pierce wouldn't notice her. He wouldn't care about someone like her. She was supposed to be invisible. Background noise. The CEO's world didn't have room for someone whose presence didn't come with influence or power. And yet, he had looked at her. Truly looked. Richard's voice cut through the tension, but even he seemed aware that something had shifted in the room. "Logan, I assume we're discussing the Preston merger." Logan's gaze didn't waver. "Yes, but priorities sometimes reveal themselves in unexpected ways, Mr. Bennett. And it seems I've just realized what, or who, matters most in this room." Ariana felt a flush rise to her cheeks, a mixture of embarrassment, thrill, and fear. She tried to focus on the documents in front of her, on the numbers and charts, on anything except the way Logan's presence made her pulse quicken. She caught him glancing sideways at her, subtle but deliberate. Her stomach flipped. She felt the tiniest thrill of something dangerous. Attraction, curiosity, something that should have warned her to run. The meeting progressed, but the world seemed smaller, quieter. Only she and Logan existed in some bubble of heat and tension. Every time she tried to focus on the figures, she caught his eyes on her again. Assessing, calculating, intriguing. Minutes passed like hours. Logan finally stood, signaling the end of the meeting, and walked toward the windows that stretched floor to ceiling. His reflection in the glass was sharper than reality, dominant, commanding, untouchable. Ariana couldn't look away. She wanted to, but the pull was magnetic. He turned slightly, just enough that the city lights glinted off his sharp cheekbones. "I'll call my assistant. We'll schedule the next steps. But for now, just remember that sometimes the most valuable assets aren't found on a balance sheet." Her lips parted, but no words came. Words would have ruined everything. Maybe they already had. Logan's hand brushed lightly against the table as he passed her. It was almost accidental, maybe intentional. She would never know. But the touch left a spark that lingered far longer than it should have. Richard coughed, breaking the tension, and Logan straightened, all business again. "We'll reconvene tomorrow. Full reports on every asset. I expect complete transparency." Ariana nodded, though her mind was somewhere else entirely. The conference room had become a battlefield, her thoughts and emotions tangled with intrigue, desire, and a cautious fear. Logan Pierce was dangerous. She could feel it, and yet she wanted to see more. By the time she gathered her papers and moved toward the door, Logan was already walking out, his gait confident, almost predatory. She trailed behind, not sure if she was following him or if fate was pulling her along. In the lobby, she paused to collect herself, her pulse still racing. She had to remind herself that this was business. Numbers, mergers, deals, nothing more, nothing personal. And yet, she couldn't forget the way he had said more valuable than a deal, the way he had looked at her, almost like he could see inside her. She stepped out into the cool evening air. the city alive with lights and sounds that suddenly felt sharper, louder. She tried to shake off the tension, tried to convince herself that she had misread everything. But deep down, a flutter of something dangerous had taken root, something she couldn't ignore. And somewhere in the depths of Logan Pierce's world, the first moves had been made. Moves that would change both of their lives forever. Logan reached for his phone as he exited the building, his thumb hovering over the screen. He typed a message, deliberate, precise. "She's perfect. Move to phase 1. Ariana didn't know it yet, but she had just entered a game she didn't understand. One where every smile, every glance, every word could become a weapon or a wound. And Logan Pierce was already 2 steps ahead. Her mind replayed his words, replayed the spark she couldn't ignore, replayed the thrill and the fear that surged through her chest. As she walked into the cool Manhattan night, unaware of the storm heading straight toward her, she felt the weight of the city press down, almost like it knew what was coming. Something was shifting, something monumental, and neither of them could stop it. Logan's message sent, the plan in motion, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. He didn't know how unpredictable she would be. But one thing was certain. The moment he had chosen her as his next conquest, neither their hearts nor their fates would ever be the same. The days after the meeting seemed to stretch endlessly for Ariana, yet every moment carried a peculiar electricity. Logan Pierce had made himself a constant presence in her world, and every appearance was precise, calculated, yet wrapped in charm so intoxicating it blurred the line between sincerity and manipulation. He appeared at her office unexpectedly, leaning against the doorway with that infuriatingly confident smirk, and handed her a single white rose. No note, no explanation, just the flower. But she took it, unable to resist the surge of warmth in her chest. Evenings became a stage for performances she did not realize she was applauding. Candlelight dinners where the city lights reflected in his eyes, giving the illusion of softness behind the steely edge she had glimpsed in that first meeting. He remembered her favorite chocolate chip ice cream, brought it during one of the sudden rainstorms that drenched the streets of Manhattan, and insisted they eat it on the terrace, as though the world belonged only to them in that moment. Ariana began to trust the illusions Logan wove. She believed she could see the real man hidden beneath the armor of power and ruthlessness. Every laugh he forced herself to hear, every playful brush of his fingers against hers, was a thread weaving her closer to a tapestry she thought she understood. She fell hopelessly, deeply, irreversibly in love, unaware that every gesture was strategically placed, calculated for a purpose she could not yet comprehend. Richard Bennett watched all of it silently. The man who had built an empire from sweat and perseverance, whose judgment had never faltered in business, nodded approvingly. He saw what she could not. Logan Pierce's brilliance, his charm, his power. He believed Logan to be the perfect partner, the one who would secure both Ariana's future and the family's legacy. He could not see that behind every calculated smile, every gentle gesture, lay a man orchestrating an unseen plan. Even Logan's small acts of apparent tenderness were laced with calculation. He listened intently when she spoke about childhood memories, making notes in his mind about her family, her habits, her insecurities. The little things, the way she twisted her braid when nervous, the quiet sigh when her coffee was too bitter, became data points, assets in a game only he fully understood. To Ariana, it seemed he loved her. To Logan, it was a strategy. Late nights blurred into early mornings, the city below them shining like diamonds, scattered across dark velvet. Logan would call, always unexpectedly. "Are you awake?" he would whisper, voice low, soft, almost vulnerable. Ariana would answer, her pulse rising, her mind spinning. He spoke of dreams and possibilities, of shared futures, of imagined laughter in kitchens and weekend trips. He made promises without actually promising, speaking in half-truths and leaving spaces for her imagination to fill. When he arrived at her apartment unannounced with small gestures of thoughtfulness, a freshly picked bouquet, a book she had casually mentioned liking, her heart melted each time. She told herself it was love. She convinced herself that no one could be that attentive unless their feelings were genuine. Yet in the quiet corners of the night, shadows of doubt began to creep into her mind. Sometimes she caught him staring not at her eyes, but past them, as though seeing through the walls of her apartment to a world she couldn't perceive. She ignored it at first, rationalized it, and blamed it on her insecurities. She believed in the narrative she had created in her mind. Logan Pierce was perfect, and their connection was real. Every meeting with her father seemed to confirm the illusion. Richard's approving glances, the subtle nods during business discussions, reinforced the idea that Logan was trustworthy. He was more than a suitor. He was an ally, a man of integrity in her father's eyes. Ariana clung to that validation, letting it soothe the tiniest flickers of suspicion that dared surface. The most dangerous moments were the silent ones, when Logan said nothing and merely existed in the same space. The quiet tension between them was magnetic, a force she could not resist. She would catch herself imagining a life together, picturing mornings where he made her coffee, evenings where they walked hand in hand through city streets, the mundane yet intimate moments she had never dared to hope for. Logan's mastery was subtle. He never rushed intimacy. He let it build slowly, giving Ariana the illusion of choice. Each compliment, each thoughtful gesture, each carefully timed laugh deepened her trust. She believed in the depth of his attention, the tenderness he showed, never suspecting the cold precision behind the warmth. Then came the nights when he whispered his softest words, just for her ears, moments that made her heart swell and crack simultaneously. "I've never felt like this before," he said once, the light from the city painting his face in shades of gold and gray. Ariana believed him. How could she not? Every fiber of her being leaned toward him, clung to him, desired him as the only safe harbor in a storm that hadn't yet revealed its fury. Her friends noticed the change in her. She smiled more, moved with a lightness she hadn't possessed before, and spoke often of Logan, her eyes shining when she recounted their small adventures together. She described him as attentive, charming, unflinchingly caring. But there was no suspicion in her voice, no hint that perhaps the person she adored might harbor secrets hidden behind that perfection. Even during the boardroom dinners and charity events, Logan's gaze found her constantly. He laughed when she joked, complimented her with ease, and yet each movement, each gesture, was a measured calculation. It was impossible for her to see, impossible for anyone to see. The city's nights became their playground. Late-night drives, the lights streaking past, hands brushing occasionally, hearts pounding with a rhythm that felt sacred. Ariana surrendered fully, feeling the intoxicating mix of fear and excitement she had never felt before. Every touch was a promise, every smile a vow she believed in. And yet, in the moments she did not see, Logan whispered into his phone in empty hallways, the low sound of his voice barely audible, a dark undercurrent beneath the charm. "Trust me, she'll be mine soon." The words were deliberate, cold, and deliberate, a reminder that beneath every glance, every caress, every whispered word lay an intention far removed from love. Ariana would never know in those nights of soft moonlight, soft music, and stolen laughter, that her trust was a tool and her heart a weapon in a game that was only beginning. She laughed at one of his jokes later that week, the kind of laugh that made her feel weightless and free. Logan watched, a slow smile curling at the corners of his lips. But there was something in his eyes that didn't belong to joy, something sharp, something predatory, something that would leave its mark. Every day, Logan's perfection became more convincing. He remembered the details she barely noticed. He anticipated moods before they arrived. He created illusions of care so real they could fool even the wisest observers. Ariana, swept away by the storm of attention, didn't question it. She fell harder, deeper, unaware of the undercurrents she could not see. In the quiet of her apartment one night, she wrote in her journal, detailing moments that made her heart ache with happiness. Candlelit dinners, soft laughter, fingers entwined, quiet words that seemed impossible in a city of chaos. But she could not have written the whispers behind closed doors, the cold precision, the calculated plan that Logan nurtured as carefully as he nurtured her affection. By the end of the week, Ariana's world was a delicate balance between wonder and fear, between love and uncertainty, between trust and the unacknowledged truth she could not yet see. Every touch, every word, every glance held her captive, weaving a web of emotion she didn't know how to escape. She felt invincible in his arms, yet fragile in her dreams. She felt like she had found a man who could protect her, love her, cherish her. And at the same time, there was an unnameable tension, a tiny flicker in her chest that whispered she might be standing on the edge of a precipice. Logan's brilliance, charm, and unrelenting control had made him irresistible, and Ariana, with her wide heart, burning curiosity, and unshakable trust, had become the perfect counterpart. But the truth lingered just beneath the surface, invisible to her, known only to him. The love she believed in was designed to be his conquest. The line between reality and illusion blurred. Every night spent together, every laugh shared, every moment of closeness added to the intensity of her attachment. She could not see the strings he was pulling. She could not sense the game behind the smiles. She only felt the fire, the thrill, the dizzying high of attention from a man who seemed perfect in every way. It was intoxicating. It was dangerous. And it was only just beginning. Ariana paused outside the office building late one night, the echo of Logan's words whispering in her mind, unaware of the message that would soon slip across his phone. Words meant for someone else, words that would expose the truth behind the perfection she had fallen for. The moment Logan Pierce got down on one knee, the world seemed to pause for Ariana. The city around them, the bustling streets, the distant sirens, none of it mattered. Only his intense, unwavering gaze mattered. Tears welled in her caramel eyes as she realized this was the man she had been dreaming of, the one she thought she could trust with her heart. "Will you marry me?" Logan's voice was soft, almost vulnerable, yet it carried the same steel she had glimpsed behind his charm. Ariana didn't hesitate. She said yes, her voice trembling, her hands clutching his like she was holding on to every heartbeat he had ever given her. Her father, Richard Bennett, nodded approvingly from the side, pride and relief mingling on his face. He saw Logan as the perfect match for his daughter, a man capable of safeguarding the family's legacy and elevating their social standing. The wedding became a citywide sensation. News outlets and social media posts highlighted Ariana in her ivory gown, radiant and flawless, walking down the aisle with a nervous smile that belied the storm brewing beneath the surface. Guests whispered about Logan Pierce, the brilliant, ruthless CEO who had tamed the heart of the heiress. Photographers captured each moment, unaware that behind every smile lay a web of careful manipulation. During the ceremony, Ariana's hand trembled slightly as she slipped her fingers into Logan's. His grip was firm, reassuring, commanding. He whispered, almost inaudibly, "You look perfect," though his eyes flicked briefly to the contracts in his briefcase, the empire he was planning to claim. Ariana felt her heart soar, convinced that she had found forever. She didn't notice the cold calculation beneath the charm, the way he had already begun aligning the pieces for what came next. After the vows, the honeymoon was a carefully curated illusion. Logan made sure every moment seemed authentic. He arranged candlelit dinners where he remembered her favorite dishes. He left notes in her suitcase, small surprises that made her giggle and feel cherished. He learned to mimic tenderness so convincingly that even Ariana could believe he had a heart capable of true love. He made her breakfast, fluffy scrambled eggs and perfectly brewed coffee. He folded laundry with meticulous care. He bought her flowers on ordinary weekdays, kissed her forehead with a tenderness that seemed almost human. For fleeting moments, Logan allowed himself to imagine a life where love might exist. In those rare seconds, he felt almost real, almost capable of feeling what she felt. Ariana's joy was palpable. She floated through their apartment, humming softly, arranging flowers, admiring small touches Logan had made around their home. Every gesture reinforced her belief that she had married the man of her dreams. She trusted him with her entire being, her heart wide open, unaware that her faith was being used as a tool. Logan's smiles were equally convincing. He played the role of the devoted husband flawlessly. When she recounted a childhood memory or laughed at a small joke, his eyes softened, his arms slipped around her waist. It was the kind of love she had always imagined, intimate, attentive, protective. Yet behind the warmth was precision. Every word, every touch, every moment of supposed intimacy served a dual purpose. Logan measured, evaluated, and recorded in his mind, cataloging her habits, her emotions, and her weaknesses. Each action was a calculated step toward a single goal: Bennett Industries. Her affection, her trust, and her heart were all part of the acquisition, the plan that would secure his empire and elevate his influence. Days turned into weeks. Logan continued to perfect the illusion. He smiled when she laughed, kissed her in the morning light, and whispered promises of a life full of happiness. Ariana believed it. She believed in him fully, completely, with no reservations. Her love for him deepened with each passing day. She did not see the cracks beneath the surface, the moments when his mind wandered to balance sheets, contracts, and the empire that was still not entirely under his control. Even her father was convinced. Richard Bennett praised Logan for his devotion, for the way he seemed to anticipate Ariana's every need. He saw the man of integrity, the attentive husband, the partner who would protect his daughter. What he did not see was the man who had already begun plotting to secure the family fortune without regard for the woman who trusted him blindly. The apartment echoed with laughter and warmth. Logan played his role with perfection, attending charity events with her, holding her hand with gentle assurance. Ariana felt like the luckiest woman alive, wrapped in a cocoon of care and attention she had always longed for. But in quiet moments, Logan's mind wandered. The empire was not yet his. The contracts were not yet signed. The family's fortune was tantalizingly close, and every interaction with Ariana was a stepping stone. He allowed himself small indulgences of thought. How easy it would be, how perfectly the pieces were aligning. Her trust was a tool, her affection a means to an end. One evening, after a long day of social events, Logan brought her favorite flowers to their apartment, smiling as she gasped in delight. She hugged him tightly, whispering thanks, her eyes glistening with love. He hugged her back just long enough to reinforce the illusion of care before slipping a quick glance at his phone. The world outside their apartment moved on, unaware of the intricate deception unfolding behind closed doors. Ariana's happiness was a symphony of trust and joy. Logan's mind, however, ran through strategies, contingencies, and calculated steps that would secure his ultimate goal. The delicate dance continued, a mixture of intimacy, romance, and careful manipulation. Ariana's heart was entwined with his, her laughter filling the apartment, her smiles bright and unguarded. And Logan, ever watchful, ever calculating, ensured that every move brought him closer to the prize he sought. For Ariana, it was perfection. For Logan, it was a strategy executed with precision. And yet a storm was gathering on the horizon, one that neither of them fully understood, but which would shatter the fragile illusions carefully constructed in the months of their courtship and marriage. Then, late one evening, as they sat together in the dim glow of the apartment, Logan's phone rang. He glanced at it briefly, masking any hint of concern, but the voice on the other end was tense, urgent. "Sir, your company is days away from shutting down forever." The words hit Logan like a thunderclap. He froze, the mask of calm slipping for the first time in months, while Ariana looked at him with adoration, unaware that the perfect man she loved was now standing on the edge of a disaster that could destroy everything. The moment Logan Pierce stepped through the door, the air in the apartment seemed to shift. The carefully curated perfection of his demeanor, the flawless mask of control that had defined him for years, was gone. He moved slowly, his shoulders slumped, his suit wrinkled as though the day itself had beaten him down. His eyes were red, rimmed with fatigue and frustration, and his usual commanding presence seemed fragile, almost human. Ariana noticed immediately. Something primal in her urged her forward. She dropped the stack of paperwork she had been reviewing and hurried to him, hands reaching out instinctively. She had never seen him like this, not even during tense board meetings or financial crises. This was raw, unguarded, and heartbreakingly real. "Logan," she said softly, her voice trembling just slightly. "Talk to me." He froze at the sound of her voice, the familiar warmth wrapping around him like a shield. She guided him gently to the sofa, insisting he sit while she took his hands into hers. They were warm but unsteady, betraying the storm within him. "My company. It's dying," he whispered, barely audible over the hum of the city outside. The words sounded foreign, almost impossible, coming from the man who had once dominated every boardroom he entered. "If I don't cover the debt in 7 days, we lose everything. Everything I've built." Ariana's heart clenched. She had known him as powerful, infallible, unshakable. But here he was, a man stripped bare by circumstances even he could not control. He looked so small, so vulnerable, and something inside her shattered at the sight. She leaned forward instinctively, her hands cupping his face, her lips brushing his temple in the gentlest kiss. "You won't lose anything," she whispered. Her words were more than reassurance, they were conviction. "Daddy will help us. He'll take care of it." She felt love, pure and unwavering. It radiated from her chest, enveloping him in warmth, in hope, in belief. She believed in him, in them, in the life they were building together. Logan closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sensation wash over him. The closeness, the care, the trust she placed in him. It was intoxicating. But with that intoxication came calculation. With each promise of help, each gesture of faith, he saw opportunity. He saw the keys to the empire he had longed for. He felt the pulse of power just waiting for him to claim it. "You love him, don't you?" Ariana said softly, thinking aloud as if speaking her heart into existence. "You'll fight for him. We'll fight for him. Together." Logan opened his eyes slowly. They met hers, and for a heartbeat, he allowed the faintest flicker of emotion to show, a shadow of gratitude, of desperation, perhaps even of admiration. But beneath it, the gears were already turning, already aligning toward the plan that had begun months ago. Every word of comfort, every gentle touch from her was a step closer to his ultimate goal. The night stretched around them, silent except for the occasional distant honk of a taxi, the faint hum of the city beneath the apartment. Ariana moved closer, wrapping herself around him, holding him as though the strength of her embrace could rebuild the walls of the man she loved. "You don't have to face this alone," she whispered. "I'm here. We'll get through it. I promise." Her warmth, her unwavering faith, her love. It was disarming. It should have been freeing. But to Logan, it was a tool, a weapon he could wield. He felt the weight of her trust, the way she would do anything for him, and the power it gave him was irresistible. He leaned into her embrace, letting the vulnerability show for just a moment longer, allowing her to believe she was his anchor. Every tremor in his body, every quiver of emotion was carefully measured, a performance perfected to ensure she remained oblivious to the truth. "I don't deserve you," he murmured into her hair, his voice barely audible. It was half truth, half deception, and it resonated with a sincerity she could never doubt. "I've built everything on blood, on power, on calculations. And yet, you make me feel like I'm more than that, like I'm human." Ariana smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "You are human, Logan, and humans need help sometimes. That's what love is. That's what family is." For a few minutes, the apartment held a fragile calm. The chaos of the city outside, the storm raging in his mind, all of it seemed paused, suspended in a bubble of intimacy. Ariana's faith in him was absolute, her devotion unshakable, and for a fleeting moment it almost seemed that Logan might feel the pull of authenticity, of love that wasn't just strategy, but the call of reality. The empire that had yet to be claimed, the debts threatening everything, loomed over him like a storm cloud. His phone buzzed quietly on the kitchen counter, a reminder that time was ticking, that opportunity and danger were inseparable. Ariana noticed the subtle shift, the way his jaw tightened, the flash of urgency in his eyes. She touched his arm lightly, seeking reassurance. "We'll get through this together," she whispered. "Yes," he said, voice steady, calm on the surface. "Together." But inside, his mind was racing. Every second she believed in him, every heartbeat she offered willingly, strengthened his position. He would not let this chance slip. The line between love and ambition blurred entirely, and in that blur, he saw his path clearly. Hours passed. Logan remained in her arms, allowing the comfort, the warmth, the belief to flow around him. Ariana slept briefly, her head on his chest, hands clutching at his shirt as though holding onto him could anchor her to safety. Logan remained awake, eyes open, calculating, planning, waiting. He traced the line of her jaw, the curl of her hair, the rise and fall of her chest, and while every fiber of her being whispered love, he heard opportunity. He heard power. He heard the empire that could be his if he played this right. The night deepened, streetlights flickered against the apartment walls. Logan finally allowed himself a controlled exhale, masking any trace of panic, fear, or doubt. He had to appear whole, unbroken, invincible. Ariana's love depended on it. Meanwhile, Ariana dreamed, blissfully unaware of the intricate web surrounding her. She imagined mornings filled with laughter, evenings where the world outside didn't matter, and a life of happiness crafted purely from love. Her devotion was complete, unconditional, perfect in its innocence. When the first light of dawn crept through the blinds, Logan's phone buzzed again. He picked it up casually, his fingers steady, though inside a storm raged. The voice on the other end was tense, urgent, and unmistakably critical. Richard Bennett's words crackled through the line, firm and decisive. "Transfer the funds. Now. Do whatever it takes. You'll have everything you need tonight." Logan's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. He glanced at Ariana, still sleeping peacefully in his arms, the embodiment of trust and devotion. The opportunity had arrived. Ariana shifted slightly in her sleep, murmuring softly, feeling the warmth of her husband's embrace, convinced that they would weather any storm together. She believed in him completely. And Logan, he allowed himself a calculated moment of satisfaction. The plan was moving forward. The empire was within reach. And she remained blissfully unaware, the perfect accomplice in a game only he fully understood. That same night, millions were transferred into Logan's account, the lifeline for his failing company secured by Ariana's father. He smiled faintly, hidden in the shadows, while Ariana slept peacefully, unaware that the man she loved was closer than ever to achieving his ultimate goal, and that the game she was playing for love was far more dangerous than she could ever imagine. The morning sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, falling gently across the bedroom where Ariana still slept. The warmth she had felt in Logan's arms over the past months, the tender kisses, the quiet assurances, the shared laughter, was gone. Overnight, a shift had taken place, subtle yet unmistakable. Logan Pierce, the man who had spent months building a facade of devotion, now moved through their apartment with precision and detachment, as if every gesture had been stripped of tenderness. Ariana stirred, rubbing her eyes, still hazy from sleep. She noticed it first in the way he stood, silently by the kitchen counter, hands folded behind his back, watching the city wake up. There was no smile, no playful comment, no soft brush of fingers against hers to wake her with warmth. The energy between them had changed, heavier, colder, and she didn't understand why. She tried to speak. "Good morning," she whispered softly, hoping for even a flicker of the affection that had drawn her so completely into his world. Logan's eyes lifted briefly, assessing her, unreadable, distant. "Morning," he said flatly, returning to the documents on the counter. There was no intimacy, no softness, only the hum of strategy and calculation. Days passed, and the shift became undeniable. The sweet messages she had woken up to for months disappeared. No more texts of good mornings, no reminders to eat or smile, no little notes of attention left on her pillows or beside her coffee cup. Even the ritual of breakfast tea, the one thing that had become their quiet, shared moment, vanished. Logan no longer prepared it, no longer asked how she slept, no longer lingered in ways that had made her heart feel safe. Ariana felt the absence like a physical weight pressing against her chest. Nights became long and hollow, filled with silent tears she tried desperately to hide. She held on to hope, clinging to the memories of the man she thought she knew, the man who had kissed her forehead, whispered promises, and made her believe in love. She replayed those moments in her mind, searching for any sign that the warmth would return, any flicker of the man who had seemed capable of tenderness. Meanwhile, Logan walked through the city with a different purpose. His laughter echoed late into the night over phone calls, sharp and triumphant. She could hear fragments of his conversations when he thought no one was listening, the way his voice shifted when discussing plans she could not yet imagine. "I have the money," he said one night, his tone cold, almost gleeful. "Now the real plan begins." The words were casual to him, a simple statement of success. But to anyone who could perceive the undercurrent, they carried a chilling implication. The man she had loved, the one who had played at softness and devotion, had achieved his objective. The warmth, the romance, the intimacy, everything had been a stepping stone to an end that she could not yet see. Ariana noticed the changes in his behavior subtly at first. He no longer asked about her day, no longer lingered to share small jokes or thoughts. The dinners, once candlelit and intimate, were now silent affairs with him reviewing contracts at the table, his attention elsewhere, his presence imposing yet hollow. Even the nights they spent together carried a new edge, a distance that stung more than any harsh words ever could. Her friends noticed her growing quietness. She laughed less, smiled less, but she still held on to hope. Hope that the man she had married would return to the one she had fallen for. She whispered his name in the darkness at night, held on to him as he slept beside her, hoping the warmth would come back, that the love they had shared was not truly gone. Logan, meanwhile, moved with precision, every action calculated, every word measured. He celebrated privately, reveling in the success of his latest maneuver. He no longer needed the pretense of charm or affection. It had served its purpose. Every smile she had given him, every tear she had cried, every act of trust and devotion was now woven into the strategy that would cement his control over the fortune he desired. Yet Ariana remained unaware. She continued to hope, clinging to small gestures, reading too much into the occasional soft tone or fleeting glance. She did not understand the careful orchestration behind it all, the way every shared memory had been curated to deepen her trust. Then came the night when the pretense collapsed, almost entirely. Logan stood in the living room, the dim city lights casting long shadows across his angular features. Ariana watched him, her eyes searching for some trace of the man she loved, some flicker of the tenderness that had once filled their lives. He turned slowly, his gaze locking with hers. The warmth she expected, the softness she had clung to, was gone. His eyes were sharp, unyielding, piercing into her very soul. "Pack your bags," he said, voice low, controlled and cold. "You're leaving." Ariana's heart stopped, her chest tightened, her mind raced, and a storm of disbelief, fear, and heartbreak swirled inside her. The man she had trusted completely, the man she had loved without question, was ordering her away as if she were merely a piece of furniture, an expendable asset in a game she could not yet understand. Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth to speak, to beg, to question, but the words lodged in her throat. She felt small, powerless, betrayed. The dreams she had built, the life she had envisioned shattered in an instant. Logan took a step closer, eyes cold but precise, observing her reaction. Every ounce of hesitation, every flicker of emotion, every tear she could not hold back was noted, analyzed, and catalogued. She was still unaware that her suffering was part of the path he had carved toward the empire he desired. Ariana backed away slightly, clutching her chest as though to contain the pain. Her mind reeled. The apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap. Every memory of love, every gentle touch, every whispered promise now carried the weight of deception. Logan's voice softened slightly, not out of compassion but for maximum impact, a subtle manipulation to ensure her compliance. "You won't argue," he said. "This is for your own good, for the plan." Tears streamed down her face as she realized the truth. The man she had married, the man she had believed loved her unconditionally, was not who she thought he was. And yet, she still loved him. She still ached for the warmth he had once shown, the tenderness she had once felt. Every instinct screamed at her to resist, to fight, to reclaim the life she had imagined. But she was still tied to him, emotionally, mentally, and financially, unable to fully see the game he had been playing since the first day they met. Logan watched silently as she processed the command, every second feeding his sense of triumph. The money had been secured. The affection she had offered freely had been weaponized. And now the next phase of the plan, the culmination of months of calculation, was beginning. Ariana's hands shook as she began to pack her things. The air between them was thick, taut, and charged with unspoken tension. Every movement she made was observed, every hesitation analyzed. He was in control entirely, and she remained oblivious to the full extent of the manipulation she had fallen prey to. She looked at him once, searching for a sign, any sign, that the man she loved was still inside the mask. There was none. Only the sharp, precise eyes of a man who had won what he wanted, and now wielded it without remorse. The night stretched on, silent except for the faint rustle of clothing and the distant hum of the city. Ariana packed, heart heavy, tears falling freely, clinging to the fading illusion of love that had once surrounded her. Logan stood by, calculating, observing, waiting. His victory was near, and nothing could shake the careful construct he had built. Her heartbreak, her trust, her devotion, All had been tools. And now the final act was beginning. Ariana turned toward him, eyes wide, trembling, and whispered, "Why, Logan?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, gaze fixed, voice calm but icy. "Because this is only the beginning." The words hung in the air like a storm about to break, leaving her terrified and unsure if the man she loved even existed beneath the darkness she now saw. Ariana froze in the grand hallway of the Blackwood mansion, her hands clutching the packed suitcase, her heart pounding as if it might burst through her chest. The air was thick with tension, a suffocating weight pressing down, leaving her unable to think, unable to move. She had believed in Logan. She had loved him fully, without reservation, giving him everything, her heart, her trust, her very soul. And yet, in that moment, every ounce of that devotion felt like it had been used against her. Logan's voice, low and precise, cut through the air like a knife. "You're leaving," he said calmly at first. Then venom seeped into every syllable, sharp and merciless. "You're not good enough for my family." The words struck her like a physical blow. Her knees threatened to buckle, but she remained upright, gripping her suitcase as though it could anchor her to reality. She wanted to scream, to ask why, to understand how the man she had trusted could turn so completely. But no sound came from her lips. "My parents hate you," Logan continued, his voice cold and unflinching. "They think you're beneath our status, beneath the life I am supposed to uphold. They never wanted you in the first place, Ariana." Tears slid down her cheeks, leaving trails on her porcelain skin. Her chest ached, her lungs burned with the effort of holding back sobs that threatened to escape. She had loved him with every fiber of her being, and in one instant, the illusion of forever crumbled to dust. "Logan," she whispered, voice trembling, "I gave you everything. I trusted you. I loved you. I—" "You were convenient," he interrupted, cutting her words with the precision of a scalpel. His gaze was unyielding, his jaw tight, the man she had adored now completely unrecognizable. "I used what I needed to secure what I wanted. And now, you're unnecessary." The words reverberated in the ornate halls, striking every corner with icy precision. Ariana's vision blurred, the room spinning as the weight of betrayal threatened to crush her. Every memory of tenderness, every whispered promise, every kiss and caress now felt like a lie crafted with surgical care. Richard Bennett entered the hallway at that moment, drawn by the raised voices, his face etched with confusion turning to horror as he understood the depth of Logan's cruelty. "Logan, what have you done?" His voice cracked with anger, disbelief, and heartbreak, shaking the foundations of the mansion itself. Ariana's suitcase slipped from her hands, thudding softly against the marble floor. She took a step back, trembling, every part of her body betraying the chaos inside. The love she had carried like a shield, like a beacon, had been shattered, leaving nothing but pain, emptiness, and a hollow echo of trust. I can't believe this," Richard stammered, eyes blazing with fury. "Ariana, you didn't deserve this. No one does." Logan's expression didn't waver. There was no remorse, no hesitation, only the cold certainty of a man who had achieved his goal and discarded what no longer served him. Ariana swallowed hard, forcing herself to breathe, to keep moving, to leave the house that had once felt like a home now turned into a prison of betrayal. She walked out, each step heavy, measured, yet filled with silent rage and heartache. The gates of the mansion loomed before her, symbols of the life that had been promised and then stolen. She hesitated for a moment, letting the wind whip against her face, the first sensation of freedom mingled with overwhelming despair. Tears blurred her vision as she descended the driveway, clutching herself, the ache in her chest spreading like wildfire. Every memory of love, every laugh, every whispered, "I love you," replayed in her mind, mocking her, twisting her heart into something fragile and broken. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone to call her closest friend, to hear a voice that might anchor her to sanity, to remind her that someone, anyone, cared. But her hands shook so violently that she dropped it, the device skittering across the pavement. The city's noise felt distant, unreal, a background to the storm of emotion raging inside her. That night, she didn't sleep. She wandered her small apartment, the suitcase still unpacked, hugging herself as though her own arms could hold together the pieces Logan had shattered. Every corner of her mind replayed the betrayal, dissecting it, asking questions she couldn't answer. How could he say those words? How could he betray her so completely? She had given him everything, her heart, her trust, her life. And in return, she had been discarded like an object, a convenience used and thrown aside. The tears came again, harder this time, her body racked with sobs she could not contain. She pressed her face into her palms, wishing she could disappear, wishing she could rewind time, wishing she had never let herself love him so completely. The next morning, nausea gripped her suddenly, violently. She stumbled toward the bathroom, retching into the porcelain, unable to understand the overwhelming sensations flooding her body. Her chest heaved with every wave of sickness, her mind spinning from exhaustion, grief, and confusion. As she reached for the sink to steady herself, her hands knocked over something small on the counter, a thin plastic stick, lying there from a morning she had been too preoccupied with her own life to consider. She blinked through the tears and exhaustion, her fingers trembling as she picked it up. Her heart stuttered, her vision blurred with the weight of disbelief. She stared at the device, frozen, barely daring to breathe. The small display revealed the truth she had never anticipated, the twist she could never have predicted in a life that had already been shattered. Positive. Ariana's chest tightened further, a new, complicated storm of emotion crashing through her. Shock, fear, confusion, terror, and an almost unbearable sense of responsibility collided in her mind. Logan's betrayal had been complete, but now there was more. Something growing inside her, something innocent and fragile, yet capable of changing everything. The room seemed to spin. She sank to the floor, clutching the pregnancy test, tears flowing freely, her body trembling as the implications of this discovery settled over her like a shadow. The man she had loved, the man who had used her, who had discarded her with a single phrase, had left her with more than just a broken heart. He had left her with life itself, a responsibility she hadn't expected, and a future she hadn't prepared for. The gravity of the situation weighed down her every thought. She whispered Logan's name into the silence, her voice barely audible. What? What am I going to do? The reality pressed against her in 1,000 sharp edges. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the life growing inside her. It was a tangled web she could not yet unravel, a storm she could not yet face. But one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. Ariana sank to the bathroom floor, the positive test clutched in her shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. Outside, the city carried on obliviously, but inside her a storm raged. The life growing within her meant she could never return to the past, and the man who had destroyed everything was still out there, waiting. Ariana left the city quietly, slipping out before anyone could notice, before Logan could find a way to claim her again. The streets she had once walked with him now felt like a cage, each memory a reminder of betrayal, each corner a place where heartbreak had lodged itself permanently in her chest. She took only what she could carry, leaving behind the opulence, the mansion, and the life she had thought she was building with him. Her apartment in a quieter part of the country became her sanctuary. The walls were plain, the furniture modest, but for the first time in months, she felt free. Free from Logan, free from the expectations of others, free to simply breathe. The first few months were the hardest, morning sickness, fatigue, the emotional weight of betrayal. It was a storm she bore alone. But with every passing day, she reminded herself of the life growing inside her. The babies she carried, one boy, one girl, became the beacon that pulled her through. She whispered to them at night, soft lullabies and promises of a world where love would be true, where betrayal would not define their beginnings. Ethan Pierce Bennett and Emily Pierce Bennett. Names she chose carefully, combining her love, her heritage, and the reminder that they were part of her, a symbol of strength, of hope, and of the future she would protect fiercely. She marveled at them during ultrasounds, imagining the tiny hands and feet, imagining the blue eyes that would someday mirror Logan's, yet filled with her warmth, her kindness, her love. Ariana worked tirelessly to rebuild her life. During the days, she researched, planned, and started an online store. She poured her energy into it, turning her creativity into strategy, her resilience into determination. Every shipment, every client, every late night spent planning marketing campaigns became a brick in the foundation of her new life. Slowly, her confidence returned. Slowly, she felt her heart mend, not for Logan, but for herself, for her children, for the life she was reclaiming. She learned to trust herself again, to make decisions without fear of manipulation, to honor her instincts rather than the whispered promises of someone else. Her store flourished beyond her expectations. Within 2 years, what had begun as a modest online venture transformed into a $1 million brand. Ariana became a respected entrepreneur, young, ambitious, admired not only for her products but for her resilience, her story of survival, her intelligence and bravery. She learned that power did not need to come from manipulation or wealth. It could come from heart, vision, and perseverance. Meanwhile, Logan's life took a sharp turn. The empire he had clawed for, the deals he had schemed to secure, began to collapse. Investors lost faith in him. Deals he thought ironclad fell apart. The city whispered his failures, the press dissected his arrogance, and the very reputation he had built through charm and ruthlessness crumbled around him. Parties, models, and luxury could no longer mask the reality. He had nothing. Logan moved through the ruins of his life with the same calculated precision he had once used to manipulate others. But this time, strategy alone could not rebuild trust or loyalty. Friends, partners, and associates turned away, leaving him isolated in the very towers he had once dominated. He had gained wealth through deceit, but lost respect, influence, and love in equal measure. Ariana, however, flourished in the absence of Logan. She worked through nights with her children by her side, Ethan and Emily becoming not only her joy but her motivation. Their laughter filled the apartment, their curiosity brought light to the darkest days, and their small hands clutched hers as if to say, "We're in this together, Mom." She watched them grow, each milestone a reminder that even in the wake of betrayal, life had given her a chance to create something beautiful, something lasting, something powerful. Her confidence strengthened, her voice became firmer, her vision clearer. She was no longer the woman who had clung desperately to a man who never truly loved her. She was her own anchor, her own hero, the mother of children who reflected both the past and the hope for the future. Ariana became a figure of inspiration in the business world. Her story of resilience, of rebuilding from heartbreak and betrayal, reached far beyond her local community. She received emails, messages, and calls from women and men alike, seeking guidance, mentorship, and advice. Her journey had become a testament to the power of perseverance, of courage, of refusing to let pain dictate the rest of her life. Through all of it, she never forgot Logan, not the man she had once loved, but the man who had taken from her everything she thought she had. She thought about him often, not with longing, but with clarity, examining every manipulation, every lie, every cruel word that had shaped her decisions. Each memory was a lesson, each scar a reminder to trust herself, to prioritize her children, and to never let another person define her worth. Then, one morning, a sleek envelope arrived at her office. The paper was crisp, the logo embossed, an official invitation to speak at a national business summit. Ariana's heart quickened with anticipation and nervous excitement. Her achievements, her story, her voice, they would be celebrated on a stage she had once only dreamed of reaching. She prepared meticulously for the event, rehearsing her speech, refining her presentation, and visualizing the impact she would make. She wanted to inspire, to empower, to show the world that strength could rise from heartbreak and betrayal. Ethan and Emily played quietly nearby, unaware that their mother's journey had reached a pivotal moment. As she packed her notes and laptop into her bag, a small slip of paper fell from the envelope. Her eyes widened as she read the name printed boldly, the keynote guest for the summit, Logan Pierce. Her breath caught. The man who had betrayed her, who had abandoned her, who had attempted to manipulate her life for his gain. He would be there, standing, speaking, and sharing the stage of recognition that could have been hers alone. Her stomach twisted with conflicting emotions, anger, fear, anticipation, and a flicker of unresolved longing. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and steadied herself. This was no longer about the man she had lost. This was about the woman she had become, the mother she had raised, the empire she had built from the ashes of betrayal. Ethan and Emily tugged at her skirt, their innocent laughter grounding her in the moment. She knelt down, holding them close, and whispered, "Mommy's going to show the world what we're made of." Her heart beat with a mixture of dread and determination. She would stand, she would speak, she would reclaim her power, and she would do it with the children she loved most, the life she had fought so hard to build, and the resilience that Logan could never take from her. Ariana stepped into the grand hall of the summit, scanning the crowd, when she finally saw him, Logan Pierce, smiling at the audience as if nothing had ever happened. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was firm as she whispered to herself, "This time, it's my turn." The weight of the past, the presence of betrayal, and the power of her newfound strength collided in a single moment, ready to ignite a confrontation that could change everything. The conference hall buzzed with anticipation, the chatter of influential business figures blending into a low hum of excitement. Ariana Bennett stepped through the grand doors, every eye instantly drawn to her. She wore a sharp crimson blazer, tailored perfectly to her figure, paired with sleek black pants and heels that added authority to her stride. Confidence radiated from her in waves, a force no one could ignore. Beside her, Ethan and Emily clutched her hands tightly. Their small faces mirrored her pride and strength. The twins were the living embodiment of her perseverance, of the love that had survived betrayal, of the future she had fought so fiercely to build. Their blue eyes, Logan's legacy but softened by her warmth, scanned the crowd with quiet curiosity. They were innocence wrapped in courage, unaware yet entirely present in the storm that their mother was commanding. People turned, heads snapping toward the striking trio. Whispers trailed in their wake, admiration and curiosity intertwining. Some recognized Ariana instantly, but others only caught a glimpse of someone they had never seen, strong, poised, untouchable, yet human. Gone was the woman who had bent under heartbreak. Here was a force of nature, radiant and unyielding. Logan Pierce sat near the front, the keynote guest already seated, unaware at first of who was entering. His eyes, trained to notice status, beauty, and power, caught the sharp line of crimson. His gaze followed the entrance slowly, lazily at first, then with the precision of a predator recognizing prey. And then he saw her. The woman who had once loved him blindly, the woman who had carried his children without his knowledge, now walked confidently into the room. She was breathtaking, commanding, unrecognizable from the fragile, trusting bride he had manipulated. Every step she took was measured, deliberate, each movement an unspoken declaration. I am not yours to break any more. Logan's chest tightened, his breath catching in ways he hadn't anticipated. His soul felt the sudden jolt of panic, a shock he could not mask. The warmth, the power, the dominance he had relied upon suddenly faltered in the face of the woman who had risen from the ashes of his betrayal. And then he saw them, the twins. Two little faces, delicate yet unmistakably his. Ethan and Emily, holding Ariana's hands, their innocent blue eyes scanning the audience and landing on him with a spark of recognition he could not yet interpret. The reality hit him like a freight train, his blood, his DNA, carried in two tiny bodies, untouched by his manipulation, untouched by his cruelty. Logan's hand twitched on the armrest of his chair. He leaned forward slightly, heart hammering against his ribs as if trying to escape. The smiles on the children's faces, the warmth radiating from Ariana's stance, and the confidence in her stride, it all collided into a truth he had refused to consider. He had missed it all. Every moment. Every chance to claim, control, or even know his children. The conference murmured around them, unaware of the silent earthquake shaking Logan Pierce to his core. Reporters leaned forward, cameras flashing, pens poised for the next story, but no one captured the storm in Logan's eyes. Pride, greed, and arrogance had met the ultimate reckoning. Love and resilience he had never understood. A voice, crisp and professional, cut through the tension. A reporter stepped forward, microphone raised, eyes locked on Ariana. "Miss Bennett," she asked, voice smooth but edged with curiosity, "are these your children?" Ariana paused, letting the question hang in the air. She looked down at Ethan and Emily, their small hands gripping hers tightly. Her heart swelled with emotion, protection, pride, and an almost defiant joy. "Yes," she said, her voice steady, carrying both strength and warmth. "My children." A wave of silence swept the room, broken only by the faint clicking of cameras. Eyes turned to Logan, seeking his reaction. He stood frozen, mouth slightly open, as if trying to formulate a response to the unimaginable reality confronting him. He wanted to speak. He wanted to assert, to reclaim, to command. But the words lodged in his throat. His carefully constructed world of manipulation and power had never prepared him for this. These were his children, yet they were wrapped in Ariana's strength, untouchable by his past schemes. Ariana met his gaze briefly, her expression calm, confident, unyielding. No pleading, no vulnerability, no trace of the old self that had once trusted him blindly. In that moment, Logan realized that the woman he had sought to control had become a fortress, one no amount of charm, wealth, or influence could breach. And then, Logan whispered, almost to himself, voice cracking in disbelief, betraying the shock he could not hide. "Ariana, those are mine." The room seemed to hold its breath, the tension palpable, electric, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. The twins, oblivious to the history between their parents, looked up at Logan with innocent curiosity, their presence a silent declaration of Ariana's triumph. Ariana's lips curved into a subtle smile, not cruel, not vengeful, but proud. "Yes," she said again, voice firm, "and they will never be used as tools, as pawns, or as leverage. They are mine, and I am their mother." The impact hit Logan harder than any financial collapse, any business betrayal, or personal loss he had ever endured. He had gained wealth, power, and status, yet it was meaningless in the face of the family he had abandoned, the children he had never known, and the woman he had tried to manipulate but could no longer touch. Whispers spread through the conference hall. Eyes shifted. People sensed the tension, the drama, the clash of power and truth unfolding in real time. But Ariana remained unshaken, grounded by the tiny hands that held hers, by the life she had rebuilt, by the empire she had carved from heartache and determination. Logan stepped back slightly, the veneer of confidence cracking, revealing the man beneath. One who had misjudged love, underestimated strength, and now confronted a reality he could not control. His past arrogance seemed hollow, his power meaningless. For the first time, he felt powerless in the face of a force he had never truly reckoned with. Ariana looked down at her children, then back at Logan. Her voice, steady and commanding, carried across the room. "This stage is mine, Logan. Today I speak for them, for me, for every woman who has been told they are less than. You had your chance and you failed. The rest is history." Ethan and Emily giggled softly, sensing the joy and pride radiating from their mother. They were the living proof of resilience, the embodiment of love that survived betrayal, and the innocence that had been protected from Logan's past manipulations. Logan's jaw tightened. He had underestimated her, misjudged her strength. He had thought she would crumble, that she would remain a tool for his ambitions. And now, standing before him, radiant, powerful, and untouchable, Ariana had reclaimed everything he had tried to take. The room seemed to close in on him. Every whisper, every glance, every camera flash a reminder of his failures. And yet, amidst the humiliation and shock, a spark flickered, a mixture of regret, disbelief, and a hint of longing he could not fully acknowledge. Logan's voice cracked, barely audible over the hushed murmurs of the audience. "Ariana, I can't believe this. How did you—" She raised her chin, eyes blazing, the twins at her sides, and whispered under her breath, "Watch closely, Logan. This is what you missed." The tension hung in the air like a storm, the world waiting for the next move in a battle of love, betrayal, and ultimate power. Logan's steps echoed sharply against the polished marble floor of the summit hall. He ran, but not with the confidence or calculated stride of the man who had once controlled every room he entered. This time he ran desperate, unsteady, vulnerable. The crimson blazer of Ariana caught his eye as he closed the distance, her presence dominating the space like a force of nature he could no longer control. "Ariana, please, let me explain," he called, voice cracking, trembling with a rawness that no boardroom, no negotiation had ever elicited from him. She turned slowly, her posture straight, her eyes glinting with steel under the conference hall lights. Her expression was a masterpiece of calm authority, composed yet intimidating, the same woman who had been manipulated and discarded now, towering over him, not in height but in power. "You used me," Ariana said, voice clear, cutting through the murmurs of the audience like a blade. "You humiliated me, and now you want— what? Redemption." Her words were deliberate, precise, each syllable weighted with memory and betrayal. Logan faltered. For a moment he opened his mouth, then closed it, the perfectly rehearsed lines he had used to charm and manipulate others evaporating under her scrutiny. The room seemed to contract, the board members, journalists, and audience frozen in anticipation, sensing the gravity of the confrontation. I didn't mean for," he began, but his words dissolved into nothingness as Ariana's gaze pinned him like a photograph of his own failures. Her voice softened, but there was no kindness, no tenderness, only strength forged in fire. "Do not attempt excuses, Logan. I know exactly what you are, and I know what you were capable of. But do not confuse my forgiveness for weakness. You have nothing to claim here. Not anymore." Logan's hands trembled at his sides, his chest heaved. The man who had once exuded unshakable control, ruthless confidence, and strategic dominance now crumpled visibly in front of everyone, collapsing under the weight of his own choices. "I lost everything," he confessed, tears spilling freely down his face. His voice, raw and jagged, carried across the hall. "I lost wealth, I lost reputation, I lost influence. But losing you, losing them, that destroyed me." Board members shifted uncomfortably. Some whispered. Others exchanged glances, astonished that the infamous Logan Pierce, man whose stoicism and arrogance had terrorized boardrooms, was crying openly, uncontrollably, in front of a room full of witnesses. Ariana's jaw remained set. Her gaze did not waver. She looked past him, not with hate, not with longing, but with clarity, the clarity of someone who had endured and survived. Her children, Ethan and Emily, clung to her sides, sensing the tension, sensing the storm brewing in their mother's presence. "You didn't lose me," Ariana said quietly, voice firm, carrying the weight of experience, of pain, of triumph. "You threw me away. You cast me aside like I was disposable, and this is the result of your choices." Logan sank to his knees, the last vestige of his former pride shattered. His gaze darted to Ethan and Emily, and the reality of fatherhood hit him with staggering force. The twins, his own blood, his own legacy, stood there, not as pawns, not as tools for his manipulation, but as reminders of the love he had forsaken and the life he had failed to protect. The crowd's murmurs swelled. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras clicked incessantly, but all of it faded into the background for Ariana. She felt the presence of her children, their warmth, their safety, and their innocence surrounding her like a shield. Logan's breakdown was no longer her concern. Her focus was on the future she had built, the family she was nurturing, the empire she had grown from heartbreak. Logan's hands reached out instinctively, a gesture of desperation. But Ariana stepped back, hand on her children, her stance unwavering. Every instinct told him to plead, to explain, to beg, but he knew instinctively that no words could undo the damage he had caused. I never knew. I never imagined it would come to this," Logan whispered, voice breaking, raw emotion stripped of the usual arrogance, stripped of the layers of control he had built over decades. Ariana's eyes narrowed slightly. She could see the truth. He was broken. And yet, the same arrogance lingered faintly, the echo of a man who had always believed he could control everything. She had faced him before, but this was different. She was no longer vulnerable. She was no longer reliant. She was a mother, a creator, a woman who had built a life untouched by his cruelty. Her gaze softened slightly, not in forgiveness, but in acknowledgement of the magnitude of her own growth. "You see, Logan, this is the cost of your choices. You sought power. You sought wealth. You sought to control me, to use me, and now you are powerless." He shook, shoulders trembling, unable to speak. The man who had ruled boardrooms, manipulated empires, and controlled people with a glance now faced the consequences of his cruelty, not with a business plan, but with raw, undeniable emotion. Ethan, the little boy, tugged at Ariana's sleeve, his small hand gentle but insistent. "Mommy, why is that man crying?" His voice carried the innocence of a child who did not yet understand the complexity of human emotion, only the truth of what he felt in the moment. Ariana knelt slightly to meet her son's gaze. She touched his cheek gently, her heart swelling with love, and whispered, "Because, baby, he's realizing he lost something precious, something he should have protected. But remember, it's not our job to fix the mistakes of others. We protect our family." Logan's head bowed slightly, his blue eyes glistening with tears, reflecting a man who had finally understood the depth of what he had thrown away. He wanted to reach out, to explain, to reclaim, But Ariana's calm strength formed an unbreakable barrier between them. She straightened, holding her twins firmly, radiating a power and confidence he could not penetrate. She had reclaimed her life. She had reclaimed her family. And Logan Pierce, for the first time, faced a reality he could not dominate. Ariana's gaze swept the room. Every whisper, every glance, every camera flash now told a story of triumph, resilience, and undeniable empowerment. Logan's downfall was complete, not by financial ruin, but by the undeniable strength and independence of the woman he had underestimated, betrayed, and discarded. The twins giggled softly, unaware of the gravity of the moment, yet their presence alone amplified the power Ariana exuded. Logan's world, once built on manipulation and control, lay in ruins before a woman who had transformed pain into purpose, betrayal into power, and heartbreak into a thriving life. Ariana's eyes met Logan's one final time, cold and unwavering. Ethan tugged her sleeve again and whispered, "Mommy, is he going to hurt us?" Ariana's lips curved slightly in a knowing, fierce smile. "No, my love. Now he'll watch. He'll see what he lost." Behind them, Logan sank to the floor, the weight of his failures pressing down like a crushing wave as the world around him held its breath, waiting for the storm that would follow. The summit hall had quieted, the lingering whispers fading as everyone sensed the weight of the moment. Logan Pierce sat on the floor, chest heaving, the man who had once commanded rooms now small and broken, before the woman he had underestimated. Ariana's presence was electric, her crimson blazer a symbol of power, her posture unyielding, her voice ready to speak truths that could no longer be ignored. Ethan and Emily clung to her sides, their innocent fingers wrapped around hers, anchoring her heart. They had been her motivation through the darkest nights, her reason to fight, to rebuild, to rise. They were no longer tiny infants. They were symbols of her courage, of a love that had survived betrayal and deception. Logan lifted his head slightly, eyes filled with remorse he had never known before. "Ariana, I—" His voice cracked again, the words almost lost in the magnitude of the silence. He wanted to explain, to beg, to reclaim, but all he could do was stare at the life he had abandoned, the children he had never embraced, the woman he had discarded. Ariana's gaze swept over him, unwavering, calm, yet filled with the fire of someone who had been betrayed and had chosen not to break. "Logan," she began, her voice steady, powerful, echoing through the hall. "You think this is about forgiveness? It's not. This is about closure, about showing the world and yourself that you cannot define what I build, who I protect, or what I love." The audience held their breath, captivated by the confrontation, sensing the tension crackling in the air like lightning. Logan swallowed hard, unable to hide the shame, the vulnerability, the realization that he had lost control permanently. Ethan tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, can we go home soon?" His small voice reminded Ariana that this was not a stage for Logan's theatrics. This was her life, her family, her victory. She bent down, kissing the top of his head. "Yes, baby. Home is where we belong, together. Safe, happy, and strong." Emily giggled softly, her laughter a musical reminder of resilience. "Mommy, I like our home," she said, eyes bright with innocence and pride. Ariana smiled, squeezing her hand. She had made it not by seeking revenge, but by rebuilding a life where love, trust, and respect were the cornerstones. Logan struggled to his feet, legs unsteady, the weight of his failure pressing on him like a storm. I never thought I'd see this. All of this." He gestured weakly toward the children, toward the life he had abandoned, toward Ariana, the woman who had grown beyond his reach. "You never did, Logan," Ariana said softly, yet firmly. "You never thought beyond yourself, and that is why you lost everything. You cannot manipulate love, you cannot steal a family and expect it to remain yours. You were given a chance, and you threw it away. Tears ran freely down Logan's face, not from anger, not from greed, not from control, but from the raw realization of what he had destroyed. I I was wrong, he whispered, voice almost a sob. I see it now. I see what I lost, what I destroyed, what I can never get back. Ariana's chest tightened, but she held her composure. Her voice softened slightly, not with pity, but with the authority of a woman who had faced heartbreak and emerged stronger. Yes, Logan, you lost us. But that loss is not my burden to carry anymore. It is your lesson. The twins watched quietly, sensing the intensity, sensing their mother's strength, absorbing the reality that the man who had once loomed over their lives now had no power. Ethan looked up at her and whispered, "Mommy, he's sad." Ariana crouched down to meet her son's gaze. "Yes, baby," she said gently. "And that is what happens when you hurt the people you should protect. Sometimes sadness is the consequence of our choices, but we don't let it touch us. We stay strong." Logan fell to his knees again, silently, the world he had built of manipulation and deception crumbling. He realized the depth of his mistakes, the cost of his arrogance. He had tried to control love, to force destiny, and it had destroyed everything he thought he owned. Ariana straightened, looking around the room. Board members, journalists, and attendees watched in awe as she embodied resilience, grace, and power. She spoke clearly, her voice carrying authority and pride. "Let this be a lesson. Success is not measured by wealth or control. It is measured by the love you nurture, the family you protect, and the integrity with which you live." The applause that followed was thunderous, but Ariana paid it little mind. Her eyes remained on Logan, steady and unwavering, a silent acknowledgement that the past had been reclaimed and that she would no longer be a pawn in anyone's game. Logan's voice trembled. "Ariana, I want to make things right. Please, let me—" She raised a hand, not in dismissal but in clarity. "No, Logan. This is not about redemption for you. This is about empowerment for me and my children. We are safe, we are whole, and we are stronger than ever. You had your chance to be part of this family, and you failed." Ethan giggled softly and held up his little fists. "Mommy, we won." Ariana hugged both children tightly, feeling their warmth, their love, their trust. "Yes, my loves, we did, and we always will." Logan sank to the floor fully, finally accepting his place. He had lost wealth, love, and control. And yet, in that loss, Ariana's victory shone brighter than any boardroom triumph he had ever known. She turned, walking gracefully toward the stage podium, Ethan and Emily in tow. Cameras flashed, but she no longer felt the need to impress anyone. She was there to tell her story, to claim her strength, and to show the world that love, resilience, and family could overcome even the deepest betrayal. The hall erupted in applause as Ariana spoke, her voice resonant, her message unforgettable. She told the story of a woman betrayed, of children born in secrecy, of a mother who refused to be broken. She spoke of entrepreneurship, courage, and self-belief, inspiring everyone in the room. And behind the applause, Logan remained on the floor, silent, defeated, and humbled. The empire he had sought to control was gone. The woman he had attempted to manipulate now stood taller, stronger, and untouchable. His children were safe, his legacy no longer his to claim. Ariana concluded her speech, her voice steady, filled with both power and warmth. She looked at her twins, their little hands gripping hers, and smiled. "This is our story, our life, and we will thrive together." Ethan and Emily cheered, clapping with pure joy. The crowd followed, inspired, moved, and captivated by the unbreakable family standing before them. Logan lifted his head one final time, eyes meeting Ariana's. There was no anger, no pleading, only the raw truth of a man who had finally understood the consequences of his choices. Ariana smiled faintly, a mix of triumph and compassion. "Goodbye, Logan. This is our life, and it is beautiful." As she walked off the stage, the twins skipping beside her, the hall erupted with applause once more. She had reclaimed her life, her power, her love, and her family. The story that had begun with betrayal ended with empowerment, resilience, and the unshakable truth. Love, courage, and family were stronger than any man, any money, any manipulation. And for the first time in years, Ariana felt completely free. The story closes with Ariana fully empowered, her twins safe, Logan humbled, and love and family triumphing over betrayal, leaving a satisfying, emotional, and victorious ending.